Hello, Matt Cushing. Thanks for spending some time. We want to jump into a painful story, something that you've learned in the dental lab business. You're the owner of First Choice Dental Lab. So, as the owner for a few years, what are some painful lessons that you've learned in your career so far in the dental lab business?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Rob. I think some of the things that come to mind when you ask that question are really times that that you look back on the business and we weren't living up to the expectations of myself, of our team, and it's really comes back to I think to training and systematizing and the importance of
Hmm.
training in what we do, and not just for our technicians, but for everybody on our team, from everybody who answers the phone to everybody who delivers a case to everybody that works on those cases. We like to say that we're not just a lab. We're not a lab. We're a customer service company. And understanding that and
Agree.
keeping that in mind is something that we have to do on a daily basis. And when I see us fail in some of those situations, it's usually because we didn't train the people enough, or we didn't have a specific system in place to help our people overcome a
Hmm.
challenge or something like that came up that we either didn't handle well or didn't handle properly at all. So really the most painful things that I've gone through are the times that hit you in the face, because you recognize, I know that this is an issue. Why didn't I train my staff? Why didn't I train my team on how to handle this? And that we didn't have not a canned answer, but a way, a standard response or a standard way to address that problem or that issue that arose.
So, in the absence of good training, good standards, what kind of things happen that you see that you're like, ah, man, we need better training. So in the absence of training, what's the pain that occurs that you agonize over?
Sure. It might be as simple as a customer calling in and asking a question, a more technical question about a case,
Mm,
or about a product, and our team not having the right answer or the proper response, or thinking that they have the proper response, and it's
mm,
not. Um,
mm,
so it's instilling that confidence in our team that you can say, I'm not sure. You can say, I don't
mm.
know that answer. Let me get back to you. And that's something that we really try and focus on. But yeah, it's those instances. That's an example of an instance where we're not, where we're not living up to what we think we should be as a lab.
Matt, I think that's a really great principle and a lot of wisdom in that. And I'm not sure if you know this, but Apple, in their Apple stores, they have the Genius Bar, and they go through very intense training to become a genius. I have two close friends that made it to Apple Genius status at the Apple Store. And one of the golden rules that Apple has for all of their people, including their geniuses, is when a customer comes in with a device that's broken or not working and the genius doesn't know, they train everyone to say the phrase, I don't know, but let's find out. Right. So you just confess up front that I don't know the solution immediately for this problem, but we're going to find out, and we're going to find out together. And maybe they're investigating together on the actual device, or maybe you have to go bring someone else in. But I think it's important to just be straight and say, I don't know, but we're going to find out. Right. So that way you're signaling that I don't have an immediate answer. I'm not going to make something up. And it's safe for me to admit that I don't know. But then immediately I go into, I'm going to investigate this for you or with you to get you an answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that response of saying, I don't know, but let's find out, you know, I love your point that a you're creating a safe environment, and we have to do that as an owner, as management, as leaders. We have to create that safe environment where our team feels comfortable, saying I don't know, and it.
Yeah.
I think that lends instant credibility to your team, to that customer, because you're being upfront and you're making yourself vulnerable. And then especially when you follow that up with, all right, what do we do though? What do we do?
Yep.
I'm going to get you an answer. We'll get
Yep.
back to you, or let's hold on. Let's get somebody on the phone that might be able to do that for you. So great insight there.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't come from me. And you were already kind of going down that road. So now you can use the Apple Genius store as here's the authority of why we do this.
Love it. That's going to
Um,
be in place at our next meeting for sure.
Perfect. Perfect. So Matt, you're the owner, president, general manager of First Choice Dental Lab. But you spent 6 years in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I can't resist the question of what are some things you learned playing football that you bring into dental lab entrepreneurship as the CEO of First Choice?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. And I get that question often, how did that prepare you for this? And in a lot of ways it prepared me perfectly for running a business and leading a business and leading a team. And in a lot of ways it was nothing like what the dental lab industry is like. But yeah, when it comes down to a successful football team, a successful football organization, a successful dental lab, a successful business, has many of the same things in common, and that's great people, that are fit the core values of what you're trying to establish in your company. So they fit your people that fit your core values, people that are passionate about what they do, and can come together and are great teammates, because that's one of the important parts is you've got to be able to work as a team, whether you're a football team or whether you're a dental lab. It's so
Yeah.
collaborative in the lab along with our customers,
Yeah.
that you've got to have those same principles in place. And when you look at a football team and you look at a dental lab or a business, you see those same things, in play time and time again. And I always say, I've learned probably more in hindsight and retrospect and looking back on the Steeler organization, than I did when I was there, in the middle of it, especially now as a business owner. But looking back and seeing, the culture that the Steelers created, that their ownership, the Rooney family created, it really starts there. And the type of people that you
Mm,
bring into your organization is gonna,
yep.
that's gonna determine your altitude.
I totally agree with that. You just said the type of people you bring in your organization. I've heard it said that one of the most critical roles of a CEO or general manager is who they hire, right? And because who you hire and bring into the organization is going to have a cultural impact for the better or for the worse. And so that's critical. So my guess is you having said that you do spend a decent amount of time filtering and weighing in on new candidates coming into First Choice.
Yeah, absolutely. We have core values that we recognize and that we interview on, we review on, ultimately you hire and fire on.
Hmm.
And one of the tips I received a long time ago was be slow to hire and quick to fire.
Yeah.
Um, and if you're slow to hire, and make sure that person's going to fit what you're doing. And you can teach people how to do things. You can teach people technical skills, but how they get along with your team, how they interact with your team, how they all work together. That's something that's either with you or it isn't. I can't impact your core values. So when we talk about something, for example, one of our core values is getting better every day. That we
Mm,
value being better tomorrow than we were today, and
mm,
better today than we were yesterday. That's either
mm.
part of you or it isn't. I can't train you to have that and have that desire in your life. So looking for those core values, and making sure that you're constantly reinforcing that with your team. That's a key part of how you create a successful organization.
I totally agree that the idea of bringing in people that want to be better, to grow in their skills, I think necessarily means they're open to feedback. They're open to being vulnerable and admitting, like, I don't know this thing, but I want to learn it. I want to be better. I want to grow. And not everyone is good at admitting what they don't know or admitting the skills they don't have. And, you want to create a safe environment for that, but then also push everyone to have this desire and path to grow in the lab organization, because we have to grow. If we're not growing, we're dying, right? And I'm sure you've talked
Absolutely.
a lot about that.
Absolutely. You're getting better every day. You either get better or you get worse. You never stay the same.
100%. I totally agree with that. Could not agree more. So what got you into the dental lab business?
Sure.
What is attractive to you about the dental lab industry? And just tell us a little bit how you got into the dental lab business.
Yeah, that's one of the most common questions I get is how did you was your dad a dentist? Was somebody in your family in the dental industry? Because we know that typically is what happens a lot of times
Mm,
in the dental industry. But no, I was retiring from the Pittsburgh Steelers and moving back to Chicagoland area where I grew up. A friend of a friend actually owned a dental lab in Pittsburgh, wanted to put a sales rep into the Chicagoland area. And my college degree was urban planning. I did a couple internships with engineering firms out in Pittsburgh and decided that wasn't the career path that I wanted to try my hand in sales. And so I jumped into sales for a lab. Um, really enjoyed the small business sale. That really appealed to me. And then as I learned the dental lab industry more and more and saw how products were fabricated and how personal sometimes those products are, I really, really, dug deeper and really found myself really attracted to the industry. I've always been a hands-on guy. Woodworking has always been a hobby of mine. So I like doing those type of things. I like working with my hands. And so after a couple of years, a couple of people approached me about starting our own lab here in the Chicago area. And so we did. We started First Choice Dental Lab. We've been in business about 17 years now. And we've grown from, my one technician to we're a little over 30 people now.
wow,
Full service, crown and
amazing.
bridge, implants, removables, full arch, all in X. So it's been an interesting journey. If you would ask me 20 years ago if I'd be doing this today, I'd have said you're crazy. I just said first off, what's it? but um, but
Yeah.
I truly I like you said, I'm a hands-on guy and I like the manufacturing process. I like
Mm,
building systems. And I think that's the fun part of what I do is trying to systematize our business. And that's the challenging part too. It's can be such a personalized business. It's
yep.
art and engineering,
You are
but that's how
absolutely
we
right.
got here.
It is art and it is engineering, and I do think a well-run lab does need systems because that's how you scale. Without systems, I you could probably grow to like 5 or 10 technicians and just kind of like have a very chaotic, just kind of fly by the seat of your pants type lab. But you're not going to get to 20 or 30 technicians without really good systems of here's how we behave in these types of scenarios. I quoting a friend of mine who said the best definition of company culture is one sentence. It's this is what people like us do in a situation like this. All
I
right. So
like
the
that.
people like us is who we are as people. And then here is a scenario, and here's how we're going to respond. And that is the ultimate, like, actual, like, manifestation of your company culture.
Absolutely. That's a great statement. I really, really like that. But I, I can't say enough about what you said there as far as systems. You know, every time we've hit a ceiling, it's because our systems haven't allowed us to grow. We built
Absolutely
systems
right.
that we thought would be long term, and they ended up being short term. And we said, what got
Yep.
you here won't get you there, type thing.
100%.
And we've run into that unfortunately way too often. um,
Oh, yeah. Every
and that's
organization does.
right. Well, I like hearing that because I always take that personal and something that I missed that somehow we missed. Like, how did I not think that this would fail as soon as we hit 100 units a day or whatever that
Yeah.
benchmark is? But again, I like building those systems and what I've seen as the CEO as the person guiding everything is I've got to look out what's that ultimate vision,
Mm,
and what does that look like in 1, 3, 5, 10 years? Because
yeah.
let's not put something in place for 1 year from now. Let's put something in place that's going to work for us 5 years from now, 10 years from now. So it's, there's a lot of trade-offs with that. Yeah, that's the challenge of growing and scaling is that sometimes is way more than you need today,
Yeah.
but you'll never get there if you don't have the certain things in place.
I totally agree, Matt. In developing systems is for sure super important for scale and growth. I think the caveat is there's an innovation coming next year that you don't know about because none of us do. And that innovation comes, you're like, oh man, we got to do this thing. But then you bring that innovation into the lab and you don't have a great system for it. Right. And so there's this constant, like, we built systems that were great for our current offering, but then we're changing workflows or technology or different hardware devices or software tools that we're bringing in an organization, and then they conflict with your current system. So then now we got to update and we got to make it better. I can tell you that the discipline of improving your systems incrementally never ends, right? It's kind of like working out. You just constant analysis of how are we doing, what's breaking apart, how do we improve. We got this new product line we're launching, and now we got to reinvent some systems to help us integrate it into our lab you know
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that. First off, you you can build your systems, but you have to be ready to change. You have to be ready to pivot.
yeah.
Change is inevitable. Most people
Hmm.
don't like change. Actually,
Yeah.
I think most people like change. They hate the messy middle, is what I like to say.
Mm.
Getting from
Mm.
where you're at to where you need to be. It's that messy
Yeah.
middle that everybody hates.
Oh
Putting in a
yeah.
different system, learning a new technique, but they say, "Oh, I want to be here from here," but it's that middle part that everybody wants to just skip right past, and being guilty as well. And the other thing you said there was you bring in a new product, and if you don't build that system to fit into what you're doing, or to run that product, boy, do you struggle. And we saw that
Yeah.
recently. We've been doing all on X cases, and then we added photogrammetry, and we
Hmm.
thought we had a system in place that handled it, and then you start getting a little bit busier and scaling that a little bit, and it will shoot holes in your system really quick. And
Mm.
so that's something that we've taken a step back and really tried to address how do we get from A to B, and what are the things that need to be in place. And sometimes, in the lab industry, sometimes you go, all right, let's just throw it in there and let's go with it. But
Yeah.
the lesson is, anytime you introduce something new, take some time to map out what that looks like, when it's not, a case a week, when it's
Yeah.
cases a day, and things like that. So
That's a great example. Like, I'm pretty sure every technician out there would agree that photogrammetry is amazing technology, right? I mean, I know there's some other non-photogrammetry technology that's coming out that's pretty good, but just as a category, photogrammetry is awesome. So then as a lab owner, you're like, okay, we have to do this because it's going to just dramatically improve the results. We bring it in, and then it doesn't fit seamless with your current process. And then you talked about this messy middle, and I would submit that oftentimes the messy middle is where things are going to get worse as you're reorganizing and creating your systems before they get better. And I think we know that. It's kind of like cleaning out your closet, right? Like everything gets super messy before you reorganize and you get better. And we tend to want to avoid that because we know that this change, the messy middle, is going to be painful. So let's just not go there.
you're right.
Right? But then you pay the price, 6 months from now, because the messy middle will just get harder as you add scale.
Yeah, you absolutely pay the price, and you pay the price more than what that messy middle would have looked like, if you
Yeah.
ignore that. And
Yeah.
to the point of photogrammetry, it solves so many, like, it solves so many problems in terms of data collection and, hey, we can capture the bite before surgery and after surgery with the temps and things like that. But it also creates and introduces a whole nother set of problems. So, oh
Mm-hmm.
my goodness, it's solving all these pain points that we have, but oh my goodness, it gave us new pain points. So what,
Yep.
can we look
Yep.
out and can we see what those unintended consequences? I talk about the unintended consequences,
Mm.
trying to really take time and think through what those are. And
Yep.
that takes vision, that takes clarity, that
Yes.
takes time to go through it and iterate it. And hey, let's go through it. Let's walk through it time and time again and make sure what are we missing. Um, it you know Clarity and focus and time are wonders for solving those types of types of issues.
For sure. For sure. I completely agree. Completely agree with that. I mean, at some point, you just have to jump, right? You have to buy the photogrammetry device and jump in. But then there's going to be those unintended consequences for sure that you want to find that out as soon as possible and then, create your systems, which it sounds like you have a passion for, which is super awesome. I mean, I see someone like yourself having the skills and ability to grow to 50 technicians, 100 technicians, and obviously, you want to take care of doctors and make great products, but I see you on a path of growth because of where your head's at and, bringing in new technology, but creating systems for scale because the only way to grow is through systems of scale, right? You can't grow without more people and you can't organize more people without really good systems that help them all you kind of run in unison, right? Like a really well-run NFL team, everyone's got to know the playbook, everyone's got to know their routes, and they got to know where they're going. Otherwise, it's chaos.
Absolutely. That
So,
weekly game plan, the NFL is the
yeah.
weekly game plan and everybody's got to be on the same page and know what their role is.
Hmm.
Know your role, was a big thing that we would talk about. Know what your job is, do your job. But then also, we would say, especially for our team, was the more you can do. That was something that we used to say in our tight end room. I had a couple of great coaches, Mike Mularkey, who turned into an NFL head coach, as well as Ken Wisenhunt in the NFL. Those were a couple of position coaches that I had that were phenomenal. And they would talk about the more you can do,
Mm,
more value you can add to the organization just helps you stick around in such I talk about a cutthroat business. We think the dental lab industry is cutthroat and admittedly, it's pretty tough,
can be. Yeah.
but the NFL where they're working out, 10 guys a week to see if they can upgrade your position,
Mm,
that it's pretty cutthroat. So the more value
okay.
you can bring to the table by bringing more skill sets, by learning multiple positions, whatever it might be, but that's no different than in the lab. And especially
Hmm.
as you scale and grow, something that's really smacked me is we need that type of attitude here because you don't get to a point where you have these very narrow job descriptions through that scaling process. You have to have people that can slide from this department to this department. And I can do
100%.
this job because we need one person to handle multiple roles. So that's another one of those lessons from the NFL that I try and bring to the lab.
Well, that is a good one for sure. Cross training, learning multiple skills, being able to wear multiple hats. We should all have a desire to replace ourselves in our current role and grow into higher value roles that can add more value to the lab. That's the for sure the path that we should all want to be on. So Matt, so you've learned some tough lessons by not having great systems in place and just how the wheels can fall off. But tell me a story of something that's going really well at the lab, something that you're proud of, something that brings you a lot of joy that you're wanting to keep and cultivate and improve at First Choice.
Yeah. That's a great question too. And reflecting on that is, I don't have a super specific one specific instance, but when what really brings me joy is seeing someone on our team learn a new skill and be able to apply that new skill and apply that new skill well, and be able to level themselves up
Hmm.
and be proud of what they did. An example, an example would be our technician. We were talking about All on X earlier. Our technician
Hmm.
that stepped in and learned the photogrammetry processes, learned the digital design processes from scratch, pretty much, from the ground up, and seeing the confidence that built in that technician, and how that radiates out, and how that, so that person walks around the chest a little taller, walking a little straighter,
Yes.
and
Yes.
those are the wins. It's not lip service when leaders talk about, we want our team to succeed, and what makes
Hmm.
me happiest is when I can provide the support to our managers, to our team, to help them level up. And if they can replace themselves, if they can train somebody to replace them and level themselves up, that's where we really, as an organization, that's where we start to accelerate. When you have a manager that is training somebody else to come into that role eventually, and that manager says, I want to do this next, that's where you truly see success. And so it's not lip service when we talk about wanting our people to be successful. Helping them reach their goals helps the company, be successful. And if I can focus on that, that's where I really get the most joy, is seeing people be able to level up to things that they didn't think that they could do before.
Matt, what city are you in? You're in Chicago area?
Yeah, we're in Downers Grove, Illinois, which is a western suburb of Chicago.
All right. I asked that specifically because if there's any technicians out there that live in the Chicago area, here we have Matt Cushing, who just told me what he gets a lot of joy out of is helping his team members level up. To me, that is a critical sign of an awesome leader, someone who looks down in the organization. And yes, Matt, you have authority over your organization and over your people. But if your goal and desire is to get your people to level up, you as their leader become an asset to them. If I'm on your team and I know that you care about my personal growth, growing my skills, growing my value creation in your organization, then I'm going to grow in value creation, which likely means grow in role, promotion, maybe some pay increases as I'm creating more value at First Choice. That is an awesome environment to be in, right? If it were the opposite, if it was a shut up and do your job, then I might try to build my own little kingdom out of my own little department and protect myself and insulate myself. And I'm not going to be training people to replace me because I'm just supposed to shut up and do my job. But if you as my leader is like, no, Rob, grow, work on replacing yourself, invest into a couple of awesome men and women on your team to help replace you. And then we have this other new product line we want to bring on, and you can be a part of that. And like you mentioned, this individual who was responsible for bringing in photogrammetry, of course, that's exciting, right? Like the doctor's feedback. Yeah, these cases are dropping in and other technicians want to learn. And that's amazing, right? Who doesn't want to be in that environment and be the one that brings in new technology to create value internally and externally? And Matt's happy and giving him the attaboy, pat on the back, and what's next? And I mean, what an awesome environment to be a part of. I think that's
Uh,
amazing.
yeah, and that's what we strive to create. Do we fall short at times? Absolutely. We're all human,
Of
and
course.
hopefully, in those times, and this is for everybody, hopefully in those times that we fall short, you know, those core values are still visible. Those other times, and where you've been successful are visible and are memorable. Because again, nobody's perfect, and that's
Yeah.
that's something that I've taken from other leaders that have counseled me, said, you're gonna fail. You're gonna fail on a daily basis. Give yourself some grace, be able to move on and
Yeah.
continue to build the organization and the people how you want it. And the way I look at that is if I wouldn't want to work, why would I build an organization that if it wasn't a place that I would want to work, And so
Absolutely.
that's really what it comes
I
down
love
to
that.
for me.
I love that, Matt. And as we wrap up, just one last question. What advice would you have to other dental lab owners, right? If there's a young dental lab owner, dental lab manager that's kind of early in their career, or maybe someone that's, older in their career, but they're looking for advice, what's one piece of advice that you would give to a fellow dental lab entrepreneur?
Yeah, probably would be create the space to think about the big picture,
Mm,
because all of us as business owners, and I know lab owners, they lab owners like to think that we're different than all business owners, and we're not. All business owners get stuck doing the day-to-day stuff, getting bogged down on the calls and the emails and the minutia, but you have to take time on a daily basis to look at the big picture and figure out what your highest and best use is. Doing your essential few tasks that only you can
mm,
accomplish and that only you are able to do for the business. And though that's something that I can't speak enough about, in
yeah.
terms of that being able to help you level up.
Totally agree. The as a leader, the importance of empowerment and delegation are huge, right? And if Matt has his to-do list, what are the only things that Matt can do or Matt should do? Because you probably have a lot of things you can do, but what are the most important things that you should be doing? And what are some things that you could delegate out and say, look, I'm going to empower you to help me here. I'm going to empower you to help me here. Can you help me on this project? Because the more you can delegate out and then just hone in on the most important tasks that align with, driving the big picture, I think that's critical. It's so easy in this business just to get sucked into the mundane, the day-to-day, the case pans coming through your office. I mean, I was in the office of a lab owner who had like 50 case pans in his office, right? And it's like, I get it, right? They're the most complex cases that he may need to make some technical decisions on, but I was like, man, like you've got to find someone else to help you here. Otherwise, you can't scale this to 100 case pans in your office or 200 case pans in your office, right? You have to, you know, empower your team. So I think that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah, letting go of some of that control. That's hard. It's difficult. It's not easy. It's
Yeah,
simple, but it's not
yeah,
easy. But being able to do those things gives you clarity on where the business is going, and helps you and helps your team. So it's
yeah.
it's a it's a it's a huge huge piece of being a leader.
Amen, brother. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for spending some time with me, and look forward to watching you on your journey. And we'll do this again sometime. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.